Hi there. Welcome to a special edition of our collections unboxing series. Today, I am not going to be showing you an actual artifact, nor am I going to be unboxing anything because, as you can see, we are in a cemetery. That would be considered grave robbing, and that's generally frowned upon. But I decided to bring you here to Fort Hill Cemetery to look at the Seward family burial plot. Why? Well, not everyone who comes to the Seward House Museum gets a chance to visit the cemetery, but we can learn a lot about the family and the era in which they lived from their grave markers. Let's take a closer look at some of them. Judge Elijah Miller, father of Francis, father-in-law of William Henry Seward, died in 1851. Before his death, he helped to select the site of the new Fort Hill Cemetery, and after his death, he was one of the first people to be buried here. Baby Cornelia, third born of William and Francis and first girl, died tragically at just 5 months old of smallpox. Cornelia died before the founding of Fort Hill and was originally buried in a church graveyard. After Grandpa Miller passed, Cornelia was reinterred at Fort Hill and given a new tombstone. Interestingly, there's a mistake, and she is listed as having been 5 years old at the time of her death, not 5 months. But this was not corrected. Frances died in 1865, just 9 weeks after her husband was attacked in a larger assassination plot to take out Abraham Lincoln, Andrew Johnson, Ulysses S. Grant, and William Henry Seward. After seeing her husband attacked along with her two eldest sons, Frances suffered a series of shocks, as doctors put it. Today, we would guess that they were heart attacks or strokes. Artist Emanuel Leutze was famed for painting Washington crossing the Delaware and is responsible for 3 paintings in our collection, the portraits of Fanny and Anna and the signing of the Alaska Treaty. He was commissioned to sculpt the decorative elements seen here on Frances's grave, and we can see many key Victorian-era symbols like the urn. The urn was a Greek revival image that symbolized the soul. Fanny Seward, beloved daughter of William Henry Seward, died tragically young at just 21 after suffering from both tuberculosis and typhoid fever. Her father called this his great unspeakable sorrow and created the memorial library with Fanny's books in the family house. Fanny was buried here alongside her relatives, and her gravestone, too, had a decorative urn on it. But sadly, as you can see, vandals removed it and it was never replaced. William Henry Seward died on October 10th, 1872, at the age of 71, after a brief battle with pneumonia. If you've toured the Seward House Museum, then you probably remember that he died in his home office on the green couch that is still on display in that room. His last words to his family were instructions for them to love one another. He is buried here next to his wife Frances, and his epitaph reads, "He was faithful." Seward chose this himself way back in 1846 while serving as the defense lawyer in the Freeman trial that we learned about in a previous video. Seward was receiving a lot of hatred for taking on the Freeman case, so much so that he feared he would be forgotten to time. He said that he hoped some poor lost soul would wander past his resting place and read "He was faithful" and know that Seward fought for his convictions. His tombstone's urn was not designed by Leutze like that of his wife Frances, but it was intended to complement hers. And we see another Victorian-era symbol here, the ivy, which is meant to represent the weeping willow and sorrow and mourning. Finally, let's look at the shape and size of the family gravestones. Now, you have to keep in mind, in the 1800s, body snatching was a big concern for the Victorians. Medical schools were popping up everywhere, and there was a short supply of cadavers for medical students to autopsy and study. At the time, legally, you could actually only dissect the bodies of executed criminals, so short supply. Enterprising individuals throughout Europe, England, and here in the States began digging up the bodies of the recently deceased and selling them on the black market to medical schools. So these long tombstones, these heavy tombstones that cover the entire length of the casket below it, was meant to be a deterrent to keep people from digging up the bodies. It's a lot harder to go in at an angle. If you're walking around old cemeteries, you can also see a lot of graves will have iron cages over the tombs as another way to deter body snatching. You'll also notice how flat some of the tombstones are. The Victorians wanted their cemeteries to not just be practical, but also beautiful with well-manicured lawns and plenty of trees and plants. Cemeteries back in the 1800s often served as a precursor to public parks. Families would pack a picnic and spend sunny afternoons visiting the family plot. And you know what these long, flat gravestones are good for? Spreading out your picnic feast. So thank you again for joining me on this special edition of Collections Unboxing. Check the caption below to hear about our haunted history tours.